The music in this video was performed and recorded by myself. If I were to tell you that a character that's been presumed dead for more than 12 seasons is still alive, would you believe me? And what if I was to show you proof, solid, hard proof and evidence? Would you believe me then? Keep watching to find out more. What's up ninjas, this is Ninjago Theory, and today I have got a crazy theory for you. So if you have not read the title or seen the thumbnail, basically I think that Dr. Julian is still alive. There's definitely a lot to get through. Let's not waste any more time. Like, subscribe, and let's get into this theory. So before I dive right into all the evidence and proof, let's just have a little look back over Dr. Julian's history. This is going to be really important for my theory. So I'm going to give a broad overview of his backstory, of all the episodes he's been in and what he's done, because we're going to be taking lots of different parts of that and using that as evidence and proof to make our claim. So let's start at the start. Who is Dr. Julian? He lived in a birchwood forest somewhere on the island of Ninjago. He was a mechanic and inventor. He was pretty lonely. His main thing was that he didn't really have a son. He really wanted a son. And eventually he got to the point where he made his own son. He made a robot, a ninjoid as it would be called now, Zane. His main thing with building Zane was building him to protect others who cannot protect themselves. I'm sure you all know the infamous scene in TikTok, the infamous flashback. I don't have to go through all of that. Yeah, eventually he just couldn't really keep going on. He was sick, he was old, and he was dying. So at his very last moments, he switched off Zane's memory just so he could live a normal life, be a human, just a decent thing to do, just so he can't remember being a robot, because that could distort a few things. He built Zane to replicate perfectly a human being, and he just wanted him to live a human's life. So then it looked like he died. We thought he died for a while. Zane went away. But then in season 2, we did figure out that Dr. Julian did not die that day, because shortly after, Samakai came to him, revived him with an elixir, and then told him he had to make all the skeleton vehicles. So obviously Dr. Julian was making a name for himself with all these inventions, and the skeleton army wanted to put their foot in the door and get some of this inventing. Obviously he refused, he's a good person, but they weren't going to take no for an answer, so they trapped him in a lighthouse with a monster and threatened his son Zane. I think it was really the threatening of Zane that made him submit. So he built the skeleton vehicles for them, much against his will, and this was always the thing that was going to torment him. He called himself a monster for doing this. He really didn't want to ever face Zane again after making these skeleton vehicles, as long as Zane was safe and happy. And obviously the skeletons eventually were wiped out. Well, not wiped out, but their plans were foiled. They went back into the shadows, and they didn't really need him anymore, but he was stuck in the lighthouse guarded by the Leviathan. And we could presume that he just really had no way to get out. It seemed like he was trapped here for years, until in season 2, the last voyage episode, the ninja came and found him. They rescued him. It was a big surprise. We learned all of this backstory, that he was still alive, a big reunion. And then he basically joined them on the dark island. He helped them out there by building a few vehicles. He did a few little things. He was basically a main character in season 2, and he was all fine and happy at the end of season 2. That was all okay. And then in one line in season 3, we were told that he passed away. One line. I missed it the first 2 times. I didn't even realize he was dead. I was always thinking, oh, where's Dr. Julian? It took me 3 watches to eventually hear that line. That's how insignificant it is. You would think that a main character, one of the ninja's parents, you would think that they would at least show the death, make it seem somewhat significant, but one line, one background line, it just doesn't make sense. Now, of course, this doesn't exactly mean that he didn't die. It's just strange. The circumstances are strange. It's something I wanted to investigate. And when I did look back upon his backstory, I found a few certain things that really intrigued me. And now I'm starting to think he might not be dead after all. And this could be the reason for why it wasn't really looked into too much. We could be seeing him in the future. Maybe we might not. Maybe this was an Easter egg that the writers left for the fans to eventually figure out. But I don't think he's dead. And let's go back and have a look why. So the first point in time I would like to return to is when Samakai made him make the skeleton vehicles. So if you remember, the skeleton vehicles have the ability to travel to the underworld. Now the underworld is a specific one of the 16 realms, and as described here in Ninjago Wiki, it's a realm that functions as the afterlife for fallen warriors and animals who fail to realize or accept their passing, trapped in a state of limbo. These are, of course, the Skulkin and Samukai, so they were just people who died, and instead of going to the departed realm or the cursed realm, they came here, just another version of that. And there are definitely a few ways you can get to this realm. Of course, Traveler's Tea can bring you to any realm, same with the Realm Crystal, or riding on a dragon from the realm of the Onian Dragon. There are a few little other ways, but a specific way that you could get to the underworld was skeleton vehicles. They had the ability to drive really fast, they had a little meter, and when you went over the limit, you would travel into the underworld. Now this seems like quite a strange thing for Dr. Julian to be able to design. How would he get his hands on the technology needed to travel dimensions? This sort of stuff is Realm Crystal stuff, Traveler Tea stuff. Of course, Traveler's Tea was made by an Oni Mistake, so all of this really originates from the realm of the Oni and Dragon. I'm starting to think he might have had a connection to this realm, or maybe Samukai gave him some technology needed to travel realms, and I'm thinking, and my theory is here, that Dr. Julian was not trapped in that lighthouse. He was able to travel between different realms and have other evidence for the traveling side of things. So you might be thinking, why on earth would he do this and not escape his prison with the Leviathan? Why wouldn't he go to see Zane? He mentions many times in the series that one of his main things is just wanting to be able to see Zane again. And I do think that he wanted to see Zane again, but I think he was having an internal battle, because in season 2, when they come to him, he admits in his flashback that he didn't want Zane to see him because he thought he was a monster for having created all the skeleton vehicles. So I think he was battling back and forth between really wanting to see Zane again and not wanting to let his son down for being a monster. But I think when he just saw his son, when all the ninja came, I think he kind of won the battle there. He kind of thought, do you know what, I don't care, I really want to see my son again, I want to go with him, especially when Zane said at the end of the episode that not even a monster deserves to be held captive. So I think he's been able to travel. He's probably had a few moments where he might have gone into Ninjago and wanted to go after Zane, but then he just couldn't. But then eventually in season 2, he did leave with them. Why do I think that he was traveling? It seems like a random thing. Well, there's just a few pieces of evidence within his lighthouse specifically that could point towards this. The first part is that parts of his house seem very uninhabited, very untouched, and just not well taken care of. It seems like he hasn't been here that long, even though he's supposed to have been here for years and years and years. He doesn't seem to have taken up very much of the space, considering he's been here for so long, or even tried to escape remotely. I know there's a Leviathan, but he's a master inventor. If he could make skeleton vehicles that can travel dimensions, he could find a way out of this if he really wanted to. It doesn't really make sense in my opinion. I think he had the power to get out of here if he wanted, and I think he spent most of his time in different realms rather than actually in here, just pretending that he was held captive, I suppose. If you look around his house, there are blueprints and there are inventing stuff, but it definitely gives a lot more vibes of travel. I can see maps, compasses, things that could possibly be from other realms, especially the lighthouse center bit. It looks a bit like something from Ninjago. And then in the background you can see some things that could be pictures. Now they could be blueprints, but they look a lot more like pictures to me. And how would he be able to get pictures of different things? You could argue that Samukai gave them to him for inspiration, but I think he might have taken these himself. Another reason why he might not have been so compelled to meet with Zane again, he did make Echo Zane, so that could have kept him a little bit stable. It's definitely not the same thing, but it could have helped just a little bit, because again, he was still afraid of his son, thinking he was a monster, so Echo Zane could have served that purpose. Now, when they went to the Island of Darkness, there are a few other things that I noticed. So, Wu has the medallion, and when Dr. Julian sees it, he recognizes it, and he explains perfectly how they can use it to find the Temple of Light. Now, Jay appropriately asks, how on earth did you know that? Which is exactly what I'm thinking, and you're like, okay, they're gonna solve up the plot hole here. But his answer doesn't really add up, in my opinion. I don't think he's really escaped interrogation with his answer, which is that he read a lot of books in his time. Now, there's two things about this. Number one, where would he have gotten the books? Samukai's hardly giving him books about Temple of Light. The only two ways I think he could have gotten this information is A, he did read it in a book, but he got the book from a different realm, or B, the most likely thing, if we're saying he's realm hopping, is that he got this information directly from the Oni, the dragon, and other places as well, just like that. That's, in my opinion, the only way he could have really known this information. Definitely a little bit sus. Now, the second suspicious occurrence on the island was when the ninja ran out to, I guess, go to the clock and fight the final battle. He ran for about 2 seconds and then stopped immediately, saying he was too old to go on. Now, in other moments in the series, he had run for longer, he had done a little bit more, and this run was just very suspicious. He ran for like less than 2 seconds and stopped immediately, and when he was talking to Zayn, he wasn't even out of breath. It seemed like this was staged, like this was played, like he was planning this from the beginning. He was planning to stay behind, and when he was speaking to Zayn, he was acting as if it was the last time he would ever see him. They're playing emotional music. It must seem like he was planning to leave. I'm not sure for what reason. He did say before, when he was switching off Zayn's memory switch, that he didn't want Zayn to think of himself as a robot. He wanted him to live a normal life. And I guess Dr. Julian just being around Zayn, that would remind Zayn a lot of what he actually is. And I don't think Dr. Julian wanted that, and he did mention that a few times in the series. I think maybe he just wanted to see his son one more time before going back to the lighthouse, gathering all his traveling stuff and going off on his adventures. Not unlike Bilbo Baggins in The Lord of the Rings, just leaving for one last time, just to go off to a distant land. I think we could be looking at something like that. Obviously, if this is true, something must have went wrong, because he was still here when they came back. But it definitely sounded like he was planning something, and whatever that was he was planning, I think he executed it. In between season 2 and 3, he staged his death and really just went off to a different realm. I think that he's still alive and traveling, or maybe he is dead, but I don't think he died quite the same way that we think he did. So in short, my theory is that Dr. Julian staged his death to give Zayn a normal life. We know that he was able to travel to another realm because of evidence such as him being able to build the skeleton vehicles and different things from his lighthouse. So in conclusion, this theory is just very out there. The chances of it being correct are very, very low. I just really wanted to make quite a preposterous theory just like this from the evidence that I noticed. Definitely one of my longer videos. You can bet this took weeks upon weeks to edit, but I'm glad I finally got this out. And feel free to leave your own theories, your own thoughts about this down in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed the video. That's all from me. Have a great... I almost forgot. If you don't like, subscribe, and share this with your friends, the buildable bat will be very upset.